Hey, we're live, pal. I'm Garrett, aka Double G, back with a fresh episode of We're Live, pal. As always, I'm joined by my dream team, starting with the host of Speak Now and many other shows, Denise Salcedo. What is going on?
What's up? I'm super excited to be here. I'm especially excited because we have a very exciting guest for today. So I was very happy when we made the announcement last week, and here we are, ready for the show here today.
Before we get to that very special guest, let's introduce the host of Map Men, the scoop master extraordinaire himself, Andrew Zarian.
I feel like Denise today. I've done 4 podcasts already.
Oh my God.
And I have to now go to a 4-hour meeting that follows this show. So I'm living the life of Denise Salcedo right now.
You're
you
welcome. You're welcome, by the way, for giving you the Denise experience on Twitter
The
as
Denise
well.
experience.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I did get it. We'll talk about it after our very special guest, our segment's done. But I did experience the Denise Salcedo experience, and my Twitter account exploded.
We all need that experience here. And in our fourth chair for the first part of this show is the head honcho of Major League Wrestling and someone who's been a guest on shows on this very website, like Wrestling Observer Radio, Figure 4 Daily, going back many years. Court Bauer, welcome back.
Hey guys, good to be on with you. I was just saying off the air how I think when I first did the show with Brian, which was around 2007, 2008, WWE writers hadn't been on the show. I think the beleaguered creative team was a little scared to be on the show, but I think because of those appearances, they added a confidentiality provision to a lot of the contracts. So I'm sorry, you're probably not getting a lot of writers on anymore because of those conversations a few years back.
Yes, I very much remember you on that show because Brian had a few writers coming through, and then all of a sudden there were not very many more, but you stuck around every once in a while, and I've had the pleasure of talking to you on Wrestling Observer Radio with Dave Meltzer, so very happy for you to be here. And let's just get right to it because you have a big show coming up. October 2nd is the taping for Fightland, and October 7th is the TV show for Vice. Let's talk about that. Give us all the details because this is exciting times in the MLW world.
Yeah, it's a big special we're doing. It's our biggest title fight we've done in history, title versus title, Jacob Fatu versus Alex Hammerstone. And we looked at the options on the table for how we could give this to the fans, the traditional route, pay-per-view, streaming service, all these different things. But for us to give it the biggest audience we could possibly ever have, which is on Vice TV, seemed like the perfect opportunity because we've been talking with Vice about doing a special and doing something big and loud and noisy for a while. And this just felt like the right time, the right opportunity, the right place to do it. So October 7th, it'll go down. We'll have 2 title fights on that special, 10 p.m. right after Darkside. So Vice has built out a nice wrestling block over the last few years, and we're now going to be adding into the mix. And I'm also excited because we're going to have a little someone from the big someone from the Wrestling Observer joining us. We're going to try to blow up the format because it feels like after 25 years, wrestling formats probably should be broken up a little bit. So we're going to have a news segment, bring in some of wrestling's journalists and talk the latest topics in wrestling. There's nothing that's off topic. There's no taboos. They have editorial review of what's going to go down on that segment. I don't know if they're going to talk about MLW good or bad. We'll have to wait and see. But leading the charge will be Dave Meltzer. He'll be on with us on this very special Fightland event. It'll be called MLW Embedded, the segment itself. And we're looking forward to seeing what Dave has to offer and share with the world.
That sounds
Denise.
very exciting. That sounds very awesome. And I think that's a really cool idea, kind of break down that wall and get the conversation going. That's really, really cool. So thank you for giving us that scoop. But I have a ton of questions in regards to Fightland as well, because you got, obviously the Opera Cup, you got that going. You got 8 awesome talents in there. So I kind of want to talk about that a little bit because I recently spoke to Davey Richards, and Davey Richards kind of really put over the fact that each and every single talent in this Opera Cup has so much that they want to go ahead and prove. So for you, how does it feel to be able to give platforms to these talents to go out there and essentially have, I'm looking at the matches that have the bracket and what's already been made up. I'm like, it's looking pretty good. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things we did with this new season of MLW is we wanted to continue to up the in-ring talent. And Davey, originally being a free agent, we said, man, we just love to get you in for a shot or two. And then the conversations evolved into, well, what about we talk something a little bit more permanent with a contract? And those conversations escalated, and we're really happy to have him join the team. And yeah, this Opera Cup is the most stacked one we've done in our 3 years doing it. And I think it's going to be the best one. I mean, bell to bell, you can't get much better than guys like Tankman, Alex Shelley, Lee Moriarty, Bobby Fish making his debut, TJP, Davey. I mean, it's pretty impressive. Matt Cross. So for me, it's like, okay, when you're in that position as a booker, this is the easiest booking you can do. It's when guys get injured, guys get pulled from shows, they got to do something else, they got to go to Japan, whatever. Then it's like, then you see what a true booker is made of. When you have great talent like this and they just show up and do their thing, man, that's an easy day at the office for me.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I was looking at the talent and immediately I just thought to myself, they're putting forth a lot of good talent on there. And that's the thing too, is that, when I was talking to Davey, he was just basically saying that I asked him, how it felt to be part of the MLW roster and working with you as well. And he made a joke. Obviously, I'm going to say nothing but good stuff about my boss, but he did say that one of the things that he really liked was that you guys are very in line with how you want to present professional wrestling, presenting it as a sport. And I kind of feel like we're definitely getting a glimpse of that, with this tournament and the guys involved.
Yeah, I think when we came back, we really wanted to continue to kind of build on informing our product as something different than what else is out there, because you got to find a way to compete with some very impressive competition. And I kind of leaned on my time when I was an exec producer for UFC Fight Pass for a few years, and from going into the wrestling world to the MMA world and learning how they shoot it, how they kind of stage it a little differently in production, it really made me feel like, let me take this experience forward into MLW. And having guys like Tom Lawler, King Mo, it's great. That really adds credibility. Guys like Davey Richard, who cross trains and does MMA training and a lot of grappling, it makes it feel authentic. So that it really kind of helps shape what the new era of MLW is about. And the other thing with this new product with Fusion Alpha is we're trying to kind of reset what the TV series feels, looks like. And I think when wrestling's at its best, it's kind of a reflection of culture, what's going on, especially here in the States. And so it's kind of a different, weird, dystopian kind of feel to it, because 2021's kind of had that feel in general. And we want it to be reflected in the TV show. It's not going to be glossy. It's not going to everything. It's not going to be picture perfect in terms of the graphics. We want it to feel a little grimy, a little lo-fi. And frankly, we can't counterpunch two billionaires by going big hi-fi with production. So we're going to lean into it and have a more of an underground feel, which I think plays to the kind of grounded world we're trying to present.
I wanted to ask another question before we throw it to Andrew around the Opera Cup, and we're going to put the graphic of the tournament up here in a second. But the origin story of the Opera Cup is super interesting. Can you kind of give us the background of the Opera Cup and then how you got your hands on the cup and are presenting it for the third year in a row in 2021?
Yeah, so way back before the internet was a real big thing in the 90s, I remember there were these like books where you can get just the records from wrestling in the past. So you could see like it was like broken up into decades or something, and you could just find out who won matches in 1950 to 1955. And I started collecting those. And actually, when I was at WWE, I told them, you should invest in this because we need some sort of database as a point of reference. And we did actually build out kind of a little database of these books that someone online used to sell, or whether they were in like a magazine. And I remember seeing back then there was this Opera Cup tournament, and there was different guys. There was the Polish champion, the German champion. All these different guys would come and converge and compete in a multi-day tournament at these opera houses, Boston and New York and Philadelphia at the turn of the century. And that's where wrestling was held, because there weren't like a lot of different options to hold wrestling, and what's classier than an opera house. So that's where a lot of these tournaments were held for years and years. Moving forward in the late 40s, I think around 1947 maybe, Stu Hart won it. And that was one of the last, I believe, last tournaments they held. And then, the business changed. It kind of became more of a territory system. Opera Cup didn't feel like it was really, I guess, kind of just like a lot of things, kind of just wrestling goes forward and goes into different directions. And lo and behold, the Hearts had this thing in the attic forever, I guess, up at the mansion. And Davey and the family wanted to reintroduce it. And Davey Boy Smith Jr. was with the company at the time. And he said, hey, moving forward, I want this to be established in MLW. And we took custodianship of it. And it's a big responsibility and big privilege to be able to have that opportunity to promote it and showcase the best talent every year. And so it was only apropos that Davey win it the first year. And we really wanted it to be our workhorse tournament. Year two got a little hamstrung because of the pandemic and empty arenas. But this year we're roaring back strong. And again, just you see the 8 guys in this, these are workhorses. These guys are going to go bell to bell. So in the spirit of the cup, we want to make sure that this thing feels like this is the place where you're going to see wrestling celebrated in the most purest sense of the sport itself. But it's the actual cup we have dates back probably 100 years. Like we're scared to even like polish it because the polish used today versus what you used in 1915 is a little different for what the coating is on the metal. So we actually sent it when we first brought it back 2 or 3 years ago to this place, I think out in the Midwest that did work on like the Stanley Cup. And they did a little bit of a rehab on it and made it look kind of up to date from what it used to look like. It had a few dings and a little beaten up.
Yeah, Court, I just want to say overall presentation of the show is fantastic, right? It feels like you're watching a high quality pro wrestling show. What would the challenge like to bring this back, right? To the point that we're at right now, post pandemic. What were the challenges with just getting everything back after, X amount of months with no live audience? Was it a little bit of a struggle to kind of get back in gear for you?
Yeah, I mean, you felt cautiously optimistic about how this is going to play out. Then you just have operational rust. It just happens. There's things you just forget when you haven't really done this on a regular basis from a talent end, from just production, post-production, arena operations. There was going to be some of that. And we definitely felt a little bit of it. I think we did a good job hiding it from the public, but we definitely were like, when we did a post-mortem after the show and we looked at everything, we're like, yep, we knew better than that. We should have done better than that, but it's just going to come with, not getting your reps in. Being back and going regularly moving forward with our tapings, it's great. We're cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to continue because the state of the world you don't know, but so far so good, and we're really lucky. We like using Philadelphia as our home base for now because the city has really good criteria for enforcing masks indoors, which we think is helpful. The commission's very proactive, and the arena's great. They have their own COVID compliance officer. We have ours. So it's like you want to make this as safe as possible for the fans, the talent, the crew, everyone. And this is why I kind of more or less made the arena kind of a informal residency.
No, and it looks fantastic. So the overall show looks unbelievable.
Yeah, and we've made a lot of upgrades. We really staffed up.
I'm so glad that Andrew brought up the hiatus and the pandemic and all of that, because I could only imagine, having to essentially take a break and kind of hit a little bit of a brakes on, the momentum that you guys were running on there. So, for you, how did you kind of use that hiatus to kind of advance the company, but like in a different way without having to, run shows, etc.?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things that you always run out of time in my role, like I'm doing everything. So one of the things I was able to do is have more conversations about where MLW can air and do deals with like Vice. If I was going on my usual schedule, having those conversations and doing those dances with different partners takes a lot of time and just a lot of flying. Well, everyone was doing Zoom calls and everyone had a lot of time, so we were able to kind of redirect me and my bandwidth into those conversations. And kind of my goal was to build out MLW coming out of the pandemic roaring, and that meant better media rights deals, which result in better rights fees, which allows us to sign talent or restructure deals to pay the talent more. And that's what we did. We signed those deals. The first wave was like DAZN a year and a half ago. And then we did a new deal for Hammerstone. We did a new deal for Holiday. We did a new deal for Myron Reed and Jacob Fatu. And now we just, with this Vice thing, we have some announcements coming forth about some new deals and restructuring of deals. Because anytime we were able to level up as a company, I try to pay it forward with the talent. When we started in 2017, we were running out of a nightclub. And into 18 out of a nightclub. So, you're scaling what your payroll and what you can do to stay in business is reflective of what's coming at the gate and what your rights fees are. And as we've been able to grow as a company, we've been able to build out the payroll, do more. I mean, we have 15 matches scheduled for Fightland. One of those matches is going to be a 3-on-3 match. Another one's going to be a 12-person match. Plus, there's 13 more matches. So we've blown out our roster. We're really trying to take care of the guys and grow together. That's always what I say. Look, we're going to grow together. You stay with us. And the system works for you. We're going to all turn out great. And that's why these guys re-up. They really enjoy the system, and I've lived up to my end of the bargain.
Well, see, that's one of my questions too, because you mentioned, making deals and also all of the matches that you're going to have on Fightland. One of those features Tajiri. So my question for you is, as somebody that has, relationships across the door, and we've been talking about, the Forbidden Door and all of that stuff, I do have a question for you. Does this open up a partnership with All Japan Pro Wrestling having Tajiri here?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting working with guys like Tajiri, who is the booker for All Japan and Dragon Gate, and relationship even with New Japan. I think they've been great to work with. It's fairly transactional and easy. It's very straightforward, so it's been no issues, and that's why I think we're able to work with them, work with Noah, and have that flexibility. For me, my responsibility is when our guys aren't working to be able to get them busy and keep them busy elsewhere. And whether it's Hammerstone going to Noah or hopefully some of our guys going to Dragon Gate, it's really important. So, we want the guys coming this over here for our fans, but we also want our talent going overseas to keep them busy and get different experience, new options, and create new matchups.
And my last question before we move on to Garrett, sorry, Garrett, because we were talking about this talents in the
just elbow him out of the way. Come on.
Because we were talking about those talents. One of those people that you got on there, Bobby Fish. Now, he is somebody that, like I said, I think has, wants to prove himself, especially, after having been released and now getting this platform to do so on MLW. What does it mean to you to be able to have talents like Bobby Fish as well and, kind of bringing him on board here with MLW?
His style just meshes so well with what I want out of our company. I got to work first with Bobby in 2013 when I was a consultant for Ring of Honor, and I actually introduced Tom Lawler. I think I kind of opened that door back open for him because he had been doing primarily just MMA for years, but he started as a pro wrestler and then went into MMA. He was, I think, still at the UFC, and I said, hey, there's this cool spot that Red Dragon wants to do where they have a corner man. I suggested would you be open for it? And he was, and I think he debuted at the Manhattan Center around 2013. I think it was a New Japan crossover event. So that was my first time actually meeting Tom Lawler, but also really working with Bobby Fish. And I have video still of them, like just pre-tapes I shot backstage of just the, Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish and Tom Lawler just kicking pads, and you could see like you could see that he really was into it. And lo and behold, here he is now killing it. But that's when I really first started working with Bobby, and he takes the sport seriously, but he's incredible, a master of his craft. So it was a no-brainer when I heard that he was becoming a free agent and entering the market in the summer. I mean, I called him that day, and it's a weird thing because a guy just got released, so you feel horrible for Bobby and his family, but you're also like, man, I would love to have the opportunity to work with you. Let me know when you're comfortable having that conversation, and we can see where that takes us. And Bobby was fantastic. He'll be a regular moving forward, and we're excited to have him be a part of MLW.
I wanted to talk about Hammerstone, but you mentioned Filthy Tom, and Filthy Tom's a big part of this website. So I guess my question is about if people knowing your background, like you said, you worked for Fight Pass in wrestling. Have there been other MMA fighters who have tried to reach out to kind of see, what is it like for a former MMA fighter who may want to get into pro wrestling? Or is Tom just somebody who's because I think he started out wanting to also do pro wrestling. Is he just a different kind of breed because of his background?
Yeah, I think, Tom, his plan A, he told me once, was pro wrestling. Just turned out plan B was MMA, and it was on a faster track for him. But he always had an eye on wrestling and trained in Central Florida, I believe, when he first broke in before he went over to MMA. And actually, when I was at WWE, I remember watching an early fight of his where he was, I think it was like like Central Florida cage fighting or something, and he rushes a guy against the cage, and the cage door opens like a wrestling angle. They fall out, but it's a real fight. And I just remember thinking, damn, that guy's tremendous. Didn't know Tom at the time, but I was impressed. We definitely have had people reach out from the former fighters from the UFC. Frank Mir has come to our shows. He's expressed an interest. Right before the pandemic, in fact, we were very close to doing something with Frank. Then the pandemic happened, and all your plans went out the window. I mean, everything. Nowadays, I look at what was on the whiteboard, and I'm like, how much of this can I use? How much of this is thrown away? The timing now is different, and for some of that stuff, it doesn't work right now because of where we're going creatively, or for a lot of reasons. But yeah, you always look at those guys, and there's some guys that really are huge fans. A lot of MMA fighters are huge fans. I mean, when I was around Frank Shamrock about what 10 years ago, when we were doing some stuff with Showtime and Strikeforce. He would tell me how he used to, some of his spots when he would go over to Pancrase were basically wrestling spots. I mean, that famous Bass Rutten fight, it's a classic wrestling spot when they're all on the floor doing leg locks. So, yeah, I mean, I love that a lot of MMA guys embrace wrestling. It hasn't always been that way, but I love seeing it now.
So I want to circle back to the main event of this of the Viceland TV show, Hammerstone and Fatu. I've been fortunate to see these guys a lot because I'm out here in the Bay Area, and they both have wrestled out here a ton. Fatu did a lot for APW, All Pro Wrestling, and so I've seen both guys are tremendous. Fatu's a ridiculous athlete for his size. But tell us a little bit more about both of these guys, title for title. What should fans be expecting as they tune in?
You have two guys. Fatu's never been beat since he's been in MLW for 3 years. Never been beat. He's been the world champion for 2 years. Hammerstone's been the champion for a little over 2 years. I mean, he's been an incredible champion. Both these guys, no one's touched him once they won those belts. In fact, Hammerstone's the only national openweight champion in MLW history. So, it's really interesting when they go into this fight. Styles make fights, and this one I think is going to be a huge, big fight for us. Just in terms of Hammerstone with the power, the explosiveness of Fatu. Fatu's a freak. I mean, just the agility he has reminds me a lot of his uncle Umaga, who was just like that. But actually, Jacob Fatu and what he can do and just pop off is incredible. His aerial stuff is insane. And Hammer, man, he's been putting in the work. He's been waiting for this moment for a long time. This is like the quintessential MLW fight. I really do think this is going to be a big one. And what I think there too is it's the culmination of the Contra Hammerstone feud, which has been going on for about a year. And so you get that payoff. One of the biggest things I try to do is give fans the payoff. It's really important. It's a slow burn sometimes. And when we revealed Cesar Duran, formerly Dario Cueto in another life, that was like a 6-month thing. And a lot of people I remember reading online, oh, this is going to have some lame payoff. I'm like, nope, it's not. I promise. And, it's like even when I promote we have a new TV deal and all these things in there, I was like, oh, where's the announcement? There's that. I was like, well, sometimes I get caught up in corporate, but just wait, we'll pay that off too. Sometimes I jump the gun, even on the toy deal, it's like, I was told right afterwards, wait, shh, don't say anything. We got to wait until the toy fair. I said, okay, all right, I got to be quiet for a little bit now, but I get excited. I want to share. So it's like I kind of blue ball the audience sometimes, but I don't mean it. I'm just really excited to share, and someone has to get me on like just under a gag order, I guess.
I have the same problem, Court, but I get yelled at all the time over it.
I do too. Trust me, and I'm the boss. So.
My last question for you is, obviously a huge topic for today that we've been discussing is a lot of the talent that you have on MLW. So my question for you is, in terms of scouting talent, given that you do have a lot of guys that this is really their first time on a national stage, using MLW as a national platform, how do you go about scouting the talent? What is your strategy? How do you go about that?
It's one of those things where it's never been easier because you just fire up Twitter and you'll see, some sort of video clip or a GIF or something. You're like, wow. And you go down that rabbit hole and you're like, wow. Tankman was an example of that. We signed Tankman last March of last year before he even blew up. And no one knew he was signed. We just kept it quiet because we were waiting to come back. And then, things got delayed with the pandemic. And Alex Kane's another example of that. Some clips on Twitter. I said, "Oh my God, I need to find this guy and sign him before someone else does because he is amazing." I think he's going to be a huge, huge star in MLW. So it's really never been easier to find talent. There was a time you actually had to go and scout talent or get tapes and track them down. Within a few clicks, you can find the next big thing. You just got to be able to just know where to look. And wrestling's never been healthier. There's so many places where talent's getting action every week, coast to coast, small towns, big towns. You can see it, stream it. 10, 15 years ago, you didn't have that. So it's incredible to see that support from the fans, from the local regional promoters, and give that stage to the talent. And one of the things we really like is our ability to let that talent continue to get that experience, to work different places when not working for MLW, and to take our national stage and then use it to get more bookings. So now, guys like Alex Kane, for the first time, he's flying out to LA to work for PCW. That's great. That's great. We want to accelerate their careers. And so, this is a great opportunity, great place to do that, and also develop and from this system, I think, really see what it's like to do TV production and work bigger crowds. And we really have a great roster, and we're lucky to have them.
Awesome.
Hey, Court, I want to thank you for jumping on here with us. Obviously, people can go to MLW.com to find all the latest news, but is there, one last pitch for the show upcoming, or the shows upcoming?
Well, I'll say this about Vice. Who else would be crazy enough to put Dave Meltzer on and say, just give us the real deal, give us the scoops? What other promoter is going to give Dave Meltzer a stage to say, hey, just dish on it, man, just go with it, do you? And I'm looking forward to seeing Dave and whatever news he drops on Fightland. And it's going to be a very special show. 2 fights, 2 big title matches. Join us in Titletown next Thursday on Vice TV, 10 p.m. after Dark Side, Fatu Hammerstone for free, and it doesn't get any better than that.
Court, thanks a bunch. Can't wait for that show. Definitely already on the DVR. So, and also Fusion Alpha on YouTube. I watched episode 1, and I know that's the new series, so people can check that out on the MLW YouTube channel.
Definitely check it out every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, and then on cable and dish on Saturday nights at 10 p.m. on BN Sports and in Spanish as well.
Perfect. Thanks again, Court. Take care. Have a good one.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
All right. That was Court Bauer.
Fantastic.
Much appreciate him. I said I've gotten a chance to talk to him a few different times. I mentioned last week, I had a chance to help him out with Wale Mania. The one thing that I forgot to mention is because he's mentioning that Dave Meltzer is going to be a part of the embedded part of the Vice show. When MLW relaunched as a wrestling brand, because Court, after he worked for WWE, he relaunched MLW as a podcast brand. And so him and Conan and MSL were doing podcasts. Then when he decided that he's going to bring it back as a wrestling company, one of the first things I helped him with was he set up Ricochet versus Swerve as I think it was their first show back. And so what he did was he had an interview or like a video package of people building up the match. And so my son, who was, I think he was a high school senior at the time, he called his buddy. They had the video equipment. I was like trying to help them shoot it. And I would ask Dave the questions. We had Court on the phone going like, okay, how does this thing look? So Court, this is something that Court has been doing, and to see it come out in this TV show, I can't wait. Like, the match is going to be great, but there's going to be so much intrigue about this Big Dave Meltzer segment. So that'll be a blast to check out. We're going to move on, and we're going to talk about a few more things before we get out of here, because Andrew, our own Andrew Zarian, was at AEW Grand Slam at Arthur Ashe Stadium on Wednesday. Andrew, how was that experience?
Oh, fantastic. It was a great show. Really good show. The building is very unique. There were some building issues at the show.
It was like Denise in Las Vegas all over again.
You finally had a bad experience.
Oh, you did not?
I went in through a side door. I went in through a side door.
Oh, my goodness. Look at this guy.
I didn't have a bad experience. I didn't even get up to get my own food. I had someone else go do it for me. I swear to
I
God,
can't.
I didn't experience any of the problems, but there were a lot of problems. The food court was a disaster. I don't think Levy. I believe Levy is the management group for the hospitality side, the concession side, and I don't think they were ready. I spoke to a couple of people that were working, and they said, "Yeah, I was told that this is a small thing." I don't think anybody anticipated. I don't know how they didn't anticipate it, considering the fact that tickets were already sold. But they said that it was it was not anticipated. They understaffed. I don't think the staff that they hired was fully in the know of how things were going. But at the end of the day, I think it was a fantastic show. It looked awesome. I'll tell you that. In the building, it looked great. On TV, it looked great. The crowd was so hot, way louder than Chicago. I thought Chicago was a loud crowd. This was super loud. Overall, listen, you got to see Brian Danielson, and Kenny Omega in their first match. First match on TV. How do you say it's not a good show?
It doesn't make sense to me how they were not prepared. Like, legitimately, how do you understaff for this event, given you already know ticket sales, etc.? That literally does not make any sense.
So, Denise, I think what it was less the anticipation of the crowd, but more of a lack of understanding who the crowd is. So for tennis, you go into the U.S. Open, that's a whole day event spread over hours and hours. And the people that are going generally go during a day. It's a little bit more tame. It's an older crowd. If you are going with kids, your kids play tennis. So your experience is a little bit more reserved compared to going to an AEW show. It's like a rock concert. Everybody's eating. Everybody's drinking. It was not. They just didn't know who their audience was.
That's just wild to me, because if you think pro wrestling, if I'm somebody who does not know anything about pro wrestling, immediately I'm going to assume my brain would automatically go, okay, this is going to be a rowdy crowd. This is going to be male dominated. It just makes sense though, right? Like when I don't understand. I don't understand. You know what? Have me run Arthur Ashe.
Yeah, you know what? Denise is going to run Arthur Ashe from now on. That's how we're going to do it.
I mentioned this, that the stadium hosts the gentlemanliest and gentlewomanliest sport of tennis. And then you bring in what Andrew said, which is kind of like the equivalent of like a sports version of a rock concert with wrestling. So I did think it was kind of just a wide degree of event. But that's why you do it the first time. And I imagine they're going to run it again next year, and hopefully they'll run it again for like a pay-per-view, because that looked like an awesome travel event. Like it just looked like,
God, I would love a pay-per-view. Yeah.
Because I'll be there.
Well,
as much.
Here's the problem. Here's a warning. Do not book in Flushing. Do not book your hotel in Flushing. Stay in Manhattan. That was a mistake everybody made. They wanted to get as close to the building as possible, but unlike a lot of other cities, there's 5,000 different ways to get to that building.
Sure.
And it's like 10 minutes away from everything. So like it's 10, 15, 12 minutes from Manhattan. It's 7 minutes from my house. I think what happened, everybody booked their hotels in these shady hourly rate Flushing hotels. And I started getting the messages from like our peers, like, dude, this is insane. I'm like, yeah, somebody asked me, how far do you live from here? And I think to assess like what kind of life I live, I was like, doesn't work like that. I'm like, you can't count it in miles in New York. I'm like 2 miles away, but it's like a whole different world where I'm at.
Right.
You're in downtown Flushing. It's our Chinatown. It's one of the biggest Chinatowns in the country. It's really, really busy. Also, it's not really like this city like Manhattan. You got John's Hotel that goes $40 by the hour or $10 by the hour. So you're not dealing with like very high-end hotels. So I think everybody was taken out. They just couldn't believe it. And then I heard that there were some issues leaving the building because the 7 train wasn't running due to maintenance. Ooh. So everybody had to kind of trek it out to like Flushing and take it from someplace else.
Dear, I really hate how much transportation has been an issue at so many of these events, man.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because that is now a worry when you do go, because you're not just worried about getting there or going and getting a hotel. You're also worried about, okay, how do I get there? And then if the show goes late, how do I get home? Which leads me to my next thing that I want to ask Andrew about, because I talked to Kenny Herzog, who's a guy who used to write for The Ringer. He's done podcasts for The Ringer. And he's done other wrestling stuff out there, Bleacher Report and such. And he was at the show too. And when I asked him, and Andrew said similar, how long did you stay? You guys didn't stay the whole time. So was this kind of like it's a work night? We got to get home early. Like, what was the reason, Andrew, why you didn't stick for the whole show?
So Jess wanted to stay for the show. My whole group stayed except for me. I had a really big meeting in the morning that it was like I was totally unprepared for. So I had to go home and, responsibilities call. So I had to go home and work on an Excel spreadsheet for the next 4.5 hours rather than being at the show. So yeah,
4.5 hours. Jeez,
dude, it was too much. It was a lot going
on. So I think, we, the shows were great. Both shows were really good. We could talk about them forever, but I did want to, because, we have about 20 minutes or so. WWE had their weekend show, Extreme Rules, which was going head up against the 49ers and the Packers on Sunday Night Football. That football game did the best TV rating for Sunday Night Football, I think, in like 6 years. So WWE may have been hit on the live streams for that show, but I kind of want to get your thoughts, both of you. And Denise, we'll start with you. Overall, going into this show, I didn't have a super high expectation of what we're going to get, though. Whenever you get to see Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair and Roman Reigns and Finn Balor, you're going to get some good wrestling. Overall, what did you think? If you were to rank it 1 through 10, what did you think about that show?
Oh, okay. Well, where do I begin? First and foremost, I think one of the main criticisms heading into the show was really the lack of extreme stipulations on an Extreme Rules show. I did think that was kind of a little bit of a bummer because, part of the, reason you watch this pay-per-view, you want to see, what stipulations they're going to be adding to the matches, etc. And they really didn't do that. So I did think that took a lot away from the actual pay-per-view itself. And it also took a lot away because there were a lot of people on social media that were like, oh, there's a pay-per-view this Sunday? I forgot. Dude, I got so many of those comments. Yeah. And I felt bad because, realistically, kind of looking at the card, I didn't necessarily blame people if this wasn't something that was on the top of their radar because of that. And then the other thing is that I do want to say this, though. Even though I completely hated the way that they ended the Finn Balor Roman Reigns match. Completely hated it. I will say this. A lot of the matches on the pay-per-view had a lot of really good wrestling. I thought that Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch was absolutely phenomenal. I think that they needed to end the match the way they did with Sasha Banks coming in. No, I would have liked for there to be an actual finish, but I was still happy to see Sasha Banks back. But in terms of that finish with Finn Balor and the ropes, my God. I mean, I've already talked about this extensively on those post shows, but it was just like, why? Why would you do this? Like, I went into this knowing that Roman Reigns was going to win. That was not the issue whatsoever at all. The issue to me, and I was one of those people that really liked the resurrection spot. I loved the heartbeat and Finn, doing that thing on the floor, coming back. And I even liked the red lights. I even liked the music. I loved all of that. I was so for it. I described it as feeling like a scene from a movie. And so for me, when you do something like that and then build it up and then have it end the way that it did, that was very disappointing. I think that they should have not done that so that I wouldn't think like, because instantly, the second they did that, I thought, you can't pin Finn Balor now. You can't do that. The guy just came back. He just resurrected himself, and you're going to pin him? That doesn't make any sense. And this is somebody that wanted Roman Reigns to win. Of course, I didn't want it to be at the expense of the demon Finn Balor, but whatever, decisions were made, and that's where we ended up. But it was just one of those things where I was like, really? The ropes falling? And everybody brought up a good point. Finn Balor, he's not even huge, like he's not the kind of guy that you would think is going to break the ropes. It was just a little frustrating.
Okay, I do want to get Andrew's thoughts on this stuff because I'm not surprised, but the way that Denise explained that she liked certain things, I didn't know what she was going to say. But before I get there, Andrew, I do want to ask her one more question, because one thing she didn't bring up was the finish to the Charlotte Alexa Bliss match, which featured Alexa crying because Charlotte tore the doll, and then she was trying to froth at the mouth and was unsuccessful at doing so. So you could see the little Alka-Seltzer, whatever was in her mouth. Like, when it comes to that side of the entertainment in the sports entertainment part of WWE, how do you feel about that stuff?
I didn't hate it.
Okay,
I didn't hate Alexa Bliss's portion in terms of her acting and her crying and being all emotional over the doll. I did not hate that. I think in terms of what they've done with the Alexa Bliss character, they have done far worse. I did not think this one was bad. However, this one, I put the entire blame on production, because production really screwed Alexa Bliss there when they showed, the big old, thing in her mouth to help her foam. That was not smart, man. I blame production there 1000%. They should have not done that. They made her look bad on top of a character that a lot of people already are not fond of.
Sure. All right, Andrew, you've talked about this a lot of times. You've talked about the E in WWE. So Denise didn't dislike a lot of the entertainment aspect of the wrestling show. What did you think about all that stuff?
I didn't think it was a bad show. I didn't think it was a terrible show. The main event was a really good match until the ending. I would not have gone with that, but maybe they're going somewhere with it. But I will tell you, this was the lowest watched watch-along that I have ever done. In the history of me doing these watch-alongs, it was the lowest that I've ever done. The general interest in this show it was virtually none. Even my social media engagement was beyond atrocious. So it just shows you that people were not really into this. And like Denise said, I don't think anybody knew. I think a lot of people didn't even realize there was a show. I had to remind myself, even though it's in my calendar, I had to remind myself the day of. I'm like, oh, okay, we have a show. And that's not a good sign. When at the end of the day, you're still selling a pay-per-view.
Yep.
At the end of the day, even though you're still selling a pay-per-view, and you've now conditioned people not to give a crap and not to really care. So, yeah, they're going to get more people. I mean, obviously, they're going to say, well, the Peacock numbers were through the roof. This is the
There's no way.
Most ordered. It's going to be through the roof because Peacock is a big network, so it's going to be big compared to the WWE network, or big compared to what would be on pay-per-view. But at the end of the day, I just feel like it was so lackluster in any kind of momentum. It was just a throwaway show that they just had to put on. It was almost like they were trying to meet the commitment because the big show's the Saudi show.
Right.
Well, so you didn't even mention the part about the Peacock essentially malfunctioning for the pre-show, and then after the first match, like that was a bad look, and Peacock needs to get it together.
So the reason why
an issue now.
The reason why I think the live views had to be down is because NBC is also running Sunday Night Football, which is also streamed live on Peacock, sort of head to head against that WWE show. So when you say that they're going to be through the roof compared to WWE Network, 100%, because they have so many more subscriptions. But I would imagine.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I mean for the press release, not actuality.
Sure. Yeah, because against SummerSlam, I'm sure those numbers were cut way down, at least on live. They may have made up some of it on the next day stuff, because that's when I watched it. I didn't watch it until Monday morning. So it is interesting because I think Denise's point about not having the Extreme Rules matches made it sort of like, oh, then what am I actually watching here? Oh, just a normal WWE show with this title. And then, Andrew, to your point about just engagement being way down, that is a sign that they need to focus a little bit more attention to what I almost get the sense that to some extent they're like, well, you guys are only paying $5 to get this thing. So, do we really have to put that much effort into it? I hope that is not the conversation that is happening. I hope they don't look at it that way. But I could totally see it because, most of the people either get this thing for free through their Comcast subscription, or, they pay the $5 to get it with the few different commercials. I mean, I do pay the $10 because I hate commercials, and they
because you're not a peasant. I'm a peasant.
But it's because they also have a good library of stuff. Like, my wife can watch The Office reruns like every day of her life, and lots of shows. So we get the value of it. But yeah, I hope that they look at this as a sign of like, okay, we may have just even spoiled a great return by Sasha Banks. Like, she's on fire as far as being a star for that company. And if a lot of people didn't watch this show, then maybe it kind of, it wasn't as impactful because, she is a star and she should be seen, by as many people as possible. Okay, for these last few minutes, I want to talk about the draft for a second or two, and then we'll get to our performers of the week. But are you excited? And Denise, we'll start with you. Do you get excited for draft week? We've seen it, the version of the draft today, which is, they're just moving people over with there's no actual draft aspect. There's no actual GMs who are competing against each other to draft, just randomly put like, but do you still get excited for these draft shows?
Are we going to get the little B-roll of the people in the networks in the office, supposedly making
the Fox
big
Studios?
Yeah. Those are so funny.
It. We're going to get some.
Oh, we are? Okay, there you go.
There we go.
Who's the guy? Well, here's one. I'll give this one. Hold on, let me find his name. I was told not to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Oh my gosh, you're going to get in trouble again.
I posted his photo. I just don't remember his name. He's like an anchor on MSNBC that does like the political charts and everything. Let me find his name.
Oh, was this the guy during the election?
Yes. Yeah, the guy during the election.
I don't remember his name.
I don't remember his name, but I posted his photo, and he's going to be doing something. And I know that there's going to be Fox crossover also, so they're going to do the same on the Fox side also. So there's going to be some sort of mainstream Fox network crossover. I don't know if it's the news side or if it's just Fox, but they plan on synergy amongst, the other properties.
Sure.
What about NXT? I think you were talking, you just tweeted something about that as well, right, Andrew?
Yeah, NXT will be part of the draft, but it's going to be one-sided. I didn't hear, it could not be. Maybe it would be both sides, but from what I was told, they expect it to be NXT call-ups to the main roster.
All right, makes sense. I hope they really need it.
That is what Meltzer said on Wrestling Observer Radio as well.
Is that the name, Steve Kornacki?
I have no idea.
Kornaki?
He is, according to the great website that is Wikipedia, he's an American political journalist, writer, and television host, national political correspondent for NBC News.
There you go.
Okay. I know I come from a very heavy sports background, and when I hear the word draft, I think of sports drafts. And I've had this idea every time the draft comes, I go, I wish they would do it like this. And the way that I would do it is to do it strategically. Like Ghetto can book the entire G1 so thoroughly and with so much detail. You could actually detail this too. But the idea would be you protect your champions, right? Anybody who is not a champion can be drafted by the other side. And let's say that SmackDown goes, oh, in our first pick, we want to take Randy Orton. So they bring Randy Orton over. And then Raw goes, oh, we want to grab Seth Rollins, and you grab Seth Rollins. And once you make that pick, you can then pull someone back off of that available roster. So SmackDown goes, or Raw goes, oh, you just took Randy Orton. Well, guess what? We're keeping Matt Riddle because we don't want to lose both guys. And then the other side can do the same thing, right? Oh, you're grabbing Seth. Well, we're going to keep Edge because we don't want you to get both Seth and Edge. And do it because that's a very fun way to basically show your hierarchy of who's really important to your show. And I've been talking about this for like 3 or 4 years, going like, I wish they would do it this way. And I know they won't. I know it's going to be just sort of like randomly, people are going to go, oh, and Raw picks X and SmackDown picks X. But I wish they would do it that way, because I think what you can do in pulling guys to the other side, you could also show who is valuable to the Raw side when you say, oh, I'm now going to protect this guy. He is not available for you to grab. Like for Raw, right? Rhea Ripley is such a great prospect for Raw. You would go, oh, maybe we protect Rhea Ripley a little bit earlier than we would protect a veteran, because she's going to have more future. And maybe if we keep her on this brand, like there's like sports elements to this thing that I think would really, really make it interesting, and people would just buy into this thing. They don't do it that way, unfortunately, for me. But anyway, the one other thing I wanted to ask Andrew about this draft is, what do you? We didn't really have time to talk about Raw. Big E beat Bobby Lashley in a cage match to end the show, and then Drew McIntyre came out. A lot of people think Drew McIntyre is going to go to SmackDown so that he can have some fresh matchups with Roman. But when he comes out at Raw and he's looks like he's going to be the next guy for Big E, do you think that changes things? Or, what do you think about Drew McIntyre? Is he going to stick on Raw? You think he goes to SmackDown? What about someone like him and then Lashley as well?
It could have been like a nice little tease for like maybe down the road to kind of avoid it. But Big E obviously is going to be on Raw. That was always the plan, unless they change their minds, and that would be really fascinating what they do if they were to swap the titles or anything. But I don't know. I think Drew is in a very interesting moment right now, because he kind of, that poor guy, he suffered from, his title run was tainted fully, and you thought you would get that big WrestleMania moment. You didn't get it with Brock, and then it kind of dwindled beyond that. But I think for him, he's a star player. They just need to put him in the right position with the right guy. I think, would he be a heel now with Big E? I mean, you don't want to really do that because they're so light on the babyface side. I think I'd like to see him on the SmackDown side, to be honest, personally.
Yeah, I think it would create something pretty fresh for him. And then, the other thing I was starting to think about with Drew is there was a word came out today, and I think it was it the Wrestle Talk folks who actually broke the story about SummerSlam 2022? Oh, no, it was Talk
Alex
Sport.
Sorry. McCarthy. Yeah, Alex McCarthy.
Yeah. Talk Sport, sorry. Possibly happening in the UK, the 30th anniversary of SummerSlam 1992, which was at Wembley. Talking about being in Principality Stadium in Cardiff, being a leading place to host a show. Drew, it would seem like he would be a fantastic person to lead that SummerSlam show. So keeping him strong, keeping him in the mix is a very smart idea. But yeah, when that news came out, the TalkSport news, I thought, wow, that's such a great idea, which is funny, because the reality of that 1992 SummerSlam situation was it didn't draw well on pay-per-view, and they always blamed the UK portion of it because it was actually taped. And when the reality is that wrestling was just on a downfall, and you had no Hogan for the first time on pay-per-view, I think, since WWE went to pay-per-view. So yeah, it's just funny that the story that they told after that was it was all the UK's fault. We can't do a pay-per-view from a place unless it's live, X, Y, and Z. But they're going to go back, and I think it's a great idea. Okay, let's wrap this show up with our performers of the week. I'll go first just to give you all a chance to think if you haven't thought about it yet. I got to go Daniel Bryan. Coming off of a small little respite from WWE. I always get a little worried when I watch him wrestle, because I remember very clearly when he was having so many concussion issues. And there's the spot where he gets thrown into the corner on the buckle bomb, but I think it was maybe he was thrown a little bit off to the side, and he does that flip over the top rope. I was like, oh my God, I was like holding my breath. What a performance by both men. But Daniel Bryan brought a different style to Kenny Omega, who can wrestle so many different styles. It was a fight. It was a submission match. It was everything that I personally love about wrestling. Like, if you ask me what's my favorite style, it is very similar to what they did on Wednesday night. Kudos to Daniel Bryan. He just showed everybody he's still one of the tippy top best in professional wrestling with that match. So Daniel Bryan is my pick. Denise, who are you taking?
All right, I gotta do Ruby Soho because of symbolism here. And by this, I mean that she literally went from being like a nobody over on, in WWE to essentially main eventing AEW's one of their biggest shows. And I just think that's just such a big deal and a big shift in her career and her life. So I gotta go with Ruby Soho.
Gotta love Ruby. She's definitely looks like a different level of star in AEW for sure. All right, Andrew, you close us out here, buddy.
I'm gonna go with Kenny. It takes two to tango.
It's a great pick.
I think he did a fantastic job with Bryan. He was safe with him. There was, there wasn't any weird spots. I mean, they worked really snug, really well. I'm gonna go with Kenny.
That's awesome. Yeah, Kenny's I don't know, I think Kenny's gonna win Wrestler of the Year. What a year he's had.
I mean, I know, unbelievable year.
Okay, so that'll wrap us up here. One wrestler I want everyone to keep their eye on. Again, we mostly talk about WWE, we talk about AEW. Zack Sabre Jr. is having a terrific G1. So if you get a chance to watch any New Japan G1, it is awesome. Not all the matches are awesome. Zack Sabre Jr. is awesome. So check out some of those matches with Zack, and Jeff Cobb is doing really well too. Kata's he's undefeated. But anyways, that'll end it here. So for Andrew, for Denise, and once again, thanks to MLW head honcho Court Bauer, I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.